let's imagine for a moment that you own a house that you want to sell.
Okay.
Now, houses don't come with price tags
Right.
on the outside. There's no big central authority that will tell you this house is worth this much. You have to set the price yourself. And as we talked about in the pricing uncertainty principle, that house, the price could be anything. So the question is, how do you set a price that you can support, that someone else would be willing to pay?
Okay.
There are actually 4 main ways that you can do this.
Okay.
Okay? The first is what's called the replacement cost method.
Okay.
And actually, a lot of these things come from there's a position of evaluating how much houses are, and or it's estimating the price of something based on all of these different factors. And one of
Right.
the factors, it's actually a pretty developed field. And one of the first ways that they look at is what's called replacement cost.
Right.
Okay, so let's do a simulation here. Imagine a meteorite, really big, house-sized, comes down
no.
and absolutely demolishes this house. Okay, house is gone.
Okay, imagining.
Nothing left, land is ruined, you have to start all over. Okay? Assume you really like this house and you want to build something identical. Okay? How much would it cost?
Okay.
How much would it cost to acquire the land, get the materials, hire an architect, hire builders to build the house, get it inspected, plumbing, electricity,
Okay.
all that stuff, total up the cost, add a little bit of markup for your time
Right.
and energy, and you have a supportable estimate on how much the house would be.
Okay. There's one way.
That's one method. Okay? Second method is what's called market comparison.
All right.
Or market pricing. And this is actually the most commonly used one for
Right.
for houses. It's like, okay, I have this house here. It's in
Right.
this neighborhood. It has these characteristics, so many bedrooms, so many
Right.
bathrooms, all these things. How much have other houses that are kind of like this one, how much did those sell for?
Right.
Okay. And, maybe, it has a bedroom more or less. Maybe it has more or less square feet. Maybe it's in a slightly different part of town or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you have a big set of these,
Right.
you can actually go through a process of adjusting up or
Makes
down.
sense.
And then you can come up with based on the market, this is how much homes like this one typically go for.
Okay.
Okay. Which is also why, you ever wonder why you don't see many books that sell for $1,000?
Yeah, you don't really.
You don't. Even if the material that's in the book is worth more than $1,000.
Right.
I mean, there's some books that you can read and triple a $1 million business.
Sure.
That's valuable. But most other books sell for around $10 to $20, and so you're going to have a really hard time
Makes
getting
sense.
any more than $10 to $20 bucks out of a book.
Okay.
If you're lucky, the maximum tends to be around
27.
100 for a textbook.
Oh, for a textbook, sure.
Yeah. And there are some market criteria there that make textbooks a little bit more to support a higher price. But things like what you're trying to sell are a good comparison that people will look into the environment and say, okay, what are other things like this selling for?
Sure.
And that provides a supportable price. Okay, so you can say another house, kind of like this one, sold for $350,000.
Right.
$1,000. This is what this house is worth.
Okay.
And you can point to that as a proof. Okay? The third, and this is actually, it's not very common, but it's useful.
Okay.
And this is actually something that is used to price things like entire businesses, which also don't come with price tags. It's called the discounted cash flow method.
Okay.
And that's a fancy way of saying, okay, think of it in terms of a house. Okay? You can sell the house, but you can also ask the question, how much could we get if we rented the house instead of selling it?
Oh.
Okay? And think of that monthly rent payment as a series of cash flows. So let's say you can get $2,000 every month for renting it, and you expect that you'll be able to do that for the next 10 years with a certain level of occupancy and a certain amount of repairs and all this stuff. There are 2 formulas that you can use called the discounted cash flow method, which is basically saying how much is that series of cash flows worth if I were to pay for it right now?
Got it.
And also the net present value formula. Like, based on all of the other things that I could do with that money, is it worth it for me to pay for it now or not? You can convert using some financial formulas. And if you're interested, we're not going to go into the details of it because it's a pretty specific situation thing. You can look them up on Wikipedia. But you can say, okay, this series of cash flows over a certain period of time is worth about this much.
Okay.
And you can package it as one number.
Makes sense.
So, that's actually how businesses are bought and sold. It's like, okay, we're bringing in $1 million of revenue a month.
Oh, right.
What is that series of cash flows worth over a longer
sense.
period of time? And how much should we pay for it now?
Right.
With the expectation that
Won't be making this much.
we're going to make that much in the future.
Okay.
Okay? Now, the fourth one, and in my opinion, it's not as common, but it's the most valuable method, is called the value comparison method. Okay. And think about the house. Okay. Let's say it's kind of a smaller house.
Okay.
Only a couple bedrooms, a bathroom or two, whatever. Nothing fancy. Not a remarkable area of town, whatever. But the house used to be owned by Elvis Presley. Okay, what does that do with the price?
Through the roof.
Exactly. Why?
Well, because people who care about that would be willing to spend a lot more money just because it's associated with Elvis.
Exactly. It's more valuable to a certain subsegment of customers because it used to be owned by Elvis and they really like it. Okay. So whereas the house may sell, normally for less than $100,000, somebody may be willing to pay $1 million for this crappy little house just because it was previously owned by Elvis. So if you can find particular characteristics of what you're selling that are more valuable to someone than something else, you can charge a higher price, which is why value comparison is actually one of the most useful methods. So, a good example is, let's say you're able to create some software and a company can use that to make $100 million next year. Okay. And you can support that. You can prove that. Okay. It doesn't matter if the replacement cost. So, you and your programmer buddy hacked it up in your basement over a week and it didn't cost you much to make. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not selling it to anybody else. So you have no series of cash flows. Right. It doesn't matter if other things that are kind of like what you do sell for $1,000 for a single license. You can say, this software is going to make you $100 million next year. You're going to pay us $1 million a year to use it. And so, by understanding the value that you're providing, you can actually support a much higher price as long as you don't capture all of the value that you're creating, which is, we'll talk about in finance about value capture. How do you make sure it's still, you charge a high enough price to make it worth it for you to sell it.
But it still looks like a good deal for them.
But it's still a good deal to the person who's purchasing it. So those are the 4 ways that you typically support a price. And so you can use you can actually use all 4 in some cases to get a range of prices.
Sure.
And that becomes how you support the price that you're asking.
Okay.